Hey guys, before we get into this amazing show, we're talking running backs to avoid. Yes, running backs I do not trust for fantasy football 2021. Before you end the show, guys, head on over to thefantasyfootballcounselor.com and pre-order 16-round draft solution. This is the game changer. It's going to help you guys crush your leagues in 2021. Do not worry about draft kits and cheat sheets and consensus rankings that are cookie cutter from last year that won't help you win. This is the game changer, guys, that will help you guys crush your leagues. First ever and only video training. You can pre-order at the lowest price of the season, thefantasyfootballcounselor.com. Link below here on YouTube, or head on over again to the website. Get it for the lowest price. It's going to help you guys crush your leagues. And why not start now? Fantasy is going to be here before we know it. 16 rounds. And of course, guys, manscaped.com. Head on over there. That's manscaped.com. Use promo code SHOWERLION. Save yourself 20% on amazing fine finished products like this Lawnmower 3.0. Shave around the sensitive areas. Do not worry about cuts and nicks. You guys will love it. Treat yourself at manscaped.com. Use promo code SHOWERLION. Save some money. Now let's get to that show right now, guys. We're talking running backs to avoid for fantasy football 2021.
Taking off the gloves, I've had enough. It's in my blood. I was born for this.
All right, guys, 2021 will be here before we know it. I want to talk about some running backs that I don't trust, that I think that you guys should avoid. Helped you guys dodge some bullets last year, including Austin Ekeler, Kenyon Drake, and many, many other guys that the mainstream told you to draft and you guys should have avoided. Now, understand, guys, what happened last year is not a reflection of what's going to happen this year. It gives you some sort of idea. Now, I'm looking at the consensus rankings, and I see that Ekeler is kind of in the top 10 again. I'm seeing some things I don't really like, and that's something that you got to be careful of. So I'm going to give you guys a list of some running backs you may want to consider avoiding because there's a potential pitfall. I want you guys in the comments to leave a comment below and let me know which running back you want to avoid this year, because again, we don't want to get hit with a potential bust, and we want to make sure if we are going robust RB, that the thing I talked about, my 16 rounds, you got to implement. You want to make sure you get the right running backs, okay? So let's talk about some guys you potentially want to avoid because it could be catastrophic. Now, again, their ADPs could be really high, right? So you don't want to pay for them, even if it's not really high, you still want to probably stay away from these guys because I personally don't trust them. But again, this could change. This is my early list, just getting a good feel of some running backs I don't really trust, okay? First guy here I don't really trust is Kenyon Drake. Now, I understand he finished 16th last year in fantasy points amongst running backs, 955 yards, 10 touchdowns. It looks okay. He had 14 games in 3 years, though. That's something you got to be aware of. So whenever I think of Kenyon Drake, I think Mr. 14 games in 3 years. He was a backup in Miami for years to wow, so we're not wowed. Now, again, he had a decent year last year, but he's kind of inconsistent when you look at it for a game-per-game basis. He's never been a workhorse. He'll never be a workhorse. I do not trust Kenyon Drake. This is a guy that everybody told you to draft in the second round, early second round, late first, early second. I said avoid him. Didn't finish in the top 10, which is kind of where his average, ADP was saying that he finished. He was in the top 10 list everywhere. Kenyon Drake finished well outside the top 10. Guys like Jonathan Taylor surpassed him, right? So Taylor we were getting in the third round. Much better value I was recommending, and Drake was going in the first round. So that's a guy I don't really trust. So you want to look at Kenyon Drake this year and think, hey, years to wow, we're not wow. And again, I keep going back to that thing. 14 games in 3 years. That's how many games he started. And, he's not a guy that I trust. And then he finally got the start in KC after. And then last year, he kind of got going. Like, if it takes you 5 years to get going, you're not a full and true workhorse running back, okay? Don't trust you. Austin Ekeler, another guy I want to talk about, finished 26th on the consensus rankings. Now, I understand he got hurt. He did play 12 games. I'm looking at his stats here. 530 yards on the ground, only had one rushing touchdown, a little bit involved in the receiving game, 54 receptions, 403 yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. This is a guy that everybody told you to draft late first, early second, similarly to Kenyon Drake. And I don't know if you guys remember, but I went on social media on my Instagram. If you're not following Instagram, make sure you guys follow. I went on and said, Kenyon Drake is not good. He's a backup. He's not good. He sucks. And basically he said, how so? And yeah, Kenyon Drake went into my comments and said, how so? And I was like, dude, you're not a workhorse running back. You're a backup to Melvin Gordon. And if Melvin Gordon, if you guys don't know, is not really that good, he's not a high-end running back. He's not your Zekes. He's not your Saquons. He's not your Christian McCaffreys of the world. He's not your Derrick Henrys. Melvin Gordon's not good, and Ekeler was a backup to him for 4 years. I don't know how many years. Sorry, I don't want to say 4 years. Let me pull this out. I think it was like 2 to 3 years. Yeah, 2 years solid backup. It was 2017, 2018. He started 3 games in those 2 seasons, so he was sitting there. If you're that good, you start right off the bat. Or if you don't start, you at least get a chance to start in 2 to 3 years, right? He never did. Finally, all of a sudden, he's a workhorse running back. Like, it's stupid. Again, he could have a high ceiling game in PPR. I don't trust him. I'm going to stay away. I was right about it last year. I'm going to stick with my gut again this year as well, okay? Another guy you want to avoid, and I don't trust him at all. He finished 19th amongst running backs, which isn't bad, but he never finished the season, and the guy I don't trust is Chris Carson. 2017, he played 4 games. 2018, he played 14. 2019, 15, which isn't bad, and then 2020, he played 12 games. A guy that gets frequently injured or out of the game or part of a committee. Never really trusting the guy. Now, there is rumors, we're going to see what happens in free agency, that Russell Wilson may or may not be back. He wants O-line help. I understand that may have impacted Chris Carson because the O-line could have been a little bit better because we see Russell Wilson scrambling quite a bit. And Russell Wilson wants more protection there in Seattle. But Chris Carson, again, his ADPs have always been relatively high. Not first round high, maybe second, third round. And it's not a guy that I personally trust, okay? Not a guy that consistently produces on a high level and continues to stay on the field on a game-to-game basis. So personally, for me, I don't trust him, okay? Now, there's a bunch of other guys I don't trust. I got to make aware. Again, Todd Gurley, he's done. He's dead to me when it comes to fantasy football. Never going to trust that guy again at all. Because, again, he had the opportunity last year to shine. He did nothing. And I don't expect him to now come out of this, injury with his knee and become like one of the top 5 running backs in the league. I think he's done. I think he's past his prime. And the fact that, Atlanta didn't want to run him, that's what bothered me. They just kept running other guys, and they just didn't want to run him. And it really bothered me last year. I thought that they would have worked him more. That whole offense was a bit of a mess, if you ask me, but it is what it is, but not a guy I definitely trust. There's other guys you have to be careful with as well. We're going to talk about sleepers and busts and potential busts throughout the offseason, but I'm just kind of having a quick initial first glance at this. And James Conner, another guy, I'm going to avoid him. I don't trust him. He played he never finished his seasons. That's the thing. 13 games last year. Okay, 10 the year before, 13 and then 14. He never finishes seasons, and not a guy I trust when you're looking at running back. So one thing you got to look at as well when you're looking at running backs, you got to look at to see if they're part of a committee. And again, a perfect example last year was Nick Chubb. Now, Nick Chubb was actually, I understand he got hurt, but he was in a committee with Kareem Hunt, and that's something that bothered me. Kareem Hunt, ironically, actually finished like I predicted. Now, I didn't really predict he'd finish ahead of Nick Chubb, but I predicted that Kareem Hunt would have a bigger year or a big year anyway. Not necessarily finishing on top, but he would dip into Nick Chubb's value, and sure enough, he did. And that's what I'm trying to warn you guys with. When you have a guy that's just as good as the other running back, he's gonna eat into his volume. Now, when you're looking at PPR numbers, Kareem Hunt actually finished 10th. Nick Chubb finished 11th last year. So Nick Chubb 207 points, Kareem Hunt 218 points PPR. And again, Chubb played only about 12 games. Okay, so you gotta understand, Nick Chubb was a guy that everybody promoted last year in the first round, like mainstream consensus that can sheep says, and he performed well below his ADP. So you got to look at guys that are workhorse running backs. Another guy well below his ADP, finished 22nd amongst running backs. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was drafted in a top 7-8 picks by the mainstream. I said, listen, I love the upside, but KC doesn't feed their running backs consistently enough to make them a top 8 pick. Yet the mainstream kept pushing Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Finished 22nd and just missed a couple games, played over 13 games. So guys, you got to be careful when you're looking at running backs. You got to look at like who else in the committee, how much volume they're going to get, because volume really predicates a lot of their output. Now, for example, like Jonathan Taylor, 232 attempts, and he didn't really get going near the end of the season. That's a guy that has a ton of ceiling. That's a perfect example. Okay, so you got to make smart decisions when you're looking at running back, and you also got to start looking at that robust RB strategy, which is loading up on running backs with minimal committees in the first 3 rounds. You do that, you're going to get value at wide receiver. We saw this last year, guys, with Justin Jefferson, a ton of value, guys. You got him later. You got Claypool, got Deontay, you got all these guys later. Robbie Anderson, and you didn't have to pay a first, second, third round pick. And we saw the bust. We saw Michael Thomas and Julio Jones bust, both first round picks. So you can wait on running backs, guys. You will succeed. You can wait on wide receivers. You will succeed if you load up on running backs, okay? Very, very important. So there's a couple running backs I'm going to avoid that I don't trust going into 2021. We're talking Drake. We're talking Chris Carson. We're talking Ekeler. We're talking a couple other guys that I mentioned here. I'm going to put out more videos on this, but this is kind of the initial thought process, just laying out a foundation going to 2021 fantasy football. And again, guys, make sure you guys leave a comment below. Let me know who you guys want to avoid. Smash thumbs up to this video. And, of course, get the 16-round draft solution, all right? I will see you guys next video. Again, it'll be here before we know it. I know football just ended, but we'll be here before we know it with more fantasy football coming up. I know you guys are going to be craving it. Soon, there's going to be no football, but it's going to be here before we know it. So make sure you guys glued to the channel. We go year-round. I'll see you guys next video.